Can your NLE remix music on the fly, save underexposed images with AI noise reduction, remove background noise from recordings in a single click, integrate complex VFX without the need to render, and give you world-class color grading tools? DaVinci Resolve can. A lot of people are deciding to use it for their entire post-production workflow, not just for color grading. Different NLEs have different strengths. This isn't about which is better. If you have decided you want to move to Resolve, you might be concerned about things like 1. The amount of time it will take to learn a new NLE. 2. Is there compatibility with your old projects? And 3. Does it do everything I need it to? I'm here to address those concerns. Switching might be easier than you think. Here's 3 reasons why. Firstly, editing is a creative art form. The creative part, when to make a cut, how to structure your edit, that's the bit that takes ages to learn. The technical stuff, where to find that tool or what hotkey to push, is much simpler. Secondly, there's a lot of similarities between NLEs. For example, Cut Tool in Premiere works much the same as it does in Resolve. It just has a different name. In Resolve, it's called the Blade tool. So in a lot of instances, there's very little to relearn. And finally, where Resolve is different, there's usually a really good reason. You'll get back any time you spent learning because it will make you a quicker and more proficient editor. Here's our goal. By the end of this video, however confident you already are about switching, you're gonna be twice, 3 times, maybe even 10 times more confident in making this change. Let's start at the beginning and load Resolve. To create a new project, hit New Project. Resolve's interface is split into pages. Each page is built for a different stage in your video production workflow. For example, there's the edit page, where you're going to spend a lot of time here. But if you want to make motion graphics, you'll do that in the Fusion page. If you want to color grade, well, you'll do that in the color page. We're going to start on the media page. This page is built for ingesting and organizing your media. In Premiere or Final Cut, one of the ways that you're probably used to importing media is by dragging it into your media pool, which is here. You can work the same way in Resolve. I'm going to drag this entire folder and drop it in the media pool. But you can see it's kind of emptied out the contents of that folder into a single bin. So let's undo that. This time, if I do it again and I drop it in this section over on the left, that's called the bin list or bin tree, you can see that it's respected how the footage was organized in those folders and recreated that structure inside Resolve. It's such a cool feature and can save you time if you've already organized your media on your drive. Tools like Live Preview make familiarizing yourself with media easy. Just hover over the media to get a quick preview. Premiere doesn't have this feature, but Final Cut does. If you don't like this feature, you can turn it off. This option is up here. In other NLEs, it's possible to reconfigure your interface to give more room to your media management and tools. I love how Resolve makes that so much easier with the media page. This entire interface is dedicated to media management, and it's not cluttered with editing or color grading tools because, well, they're not needed at this stage of the project. Thus far, everything should feel pretty familiar. Switching seems pretty easy. So now let's focus on some of Resolve's unique features. This media is in log. Maybe you're used to working with LUTs to normalize your footage. In Resolve, there's no need for that, as Resolve can handle those color transformations automatically. This little cog down here is where you can configure how your project is set up. In the Color tab, there's an awesome feature we can turn on called Color Management. Choose the option in this menu that says DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. It's as simple as that. Hit save and check this out. My footage now looks correct. It's no longer dull and gray. This is because Resolve has correctly identified the color space of my footage and normalized it into my working color space. The A camera has metadata about its color space. The B camera footage, though, it hasn't changed. It's still dull, flat, and gray. That's because it's from an older camera that does not contain metadata. So I'm going to need to manually configure the color space of these clips, but that's super easy. Let's do it. I could do all the clips at the same time. I'll select them all and then right-click and go to Input Color Space. Look at all of these different color spaces that Resolve can handle natively without the need for LUTs or plugins. This footage is in ARRI log C3, so I'll select this option. There you go, done. I want to emphasize how huge this is. Instead of having to convert my clips in the timeline with LUTs, it's color manage them directly in the media pool. And remember, when you use LUTs, you might be inadvertently damaging your image. Resolve color management gives a far superior result. If you want to learn more about that, check out our masterclass on color management. While we're talking about settings, this is a great point to tell you there's two places where settings are kept in DaVinci Resolve. Settings that affect just this project are in Project Settings, down here in this cog icon, the one I've already showed you. Things like timeline settings can be configured in here at the project level. This makes it super easy to do things like switch the resolution of all your timelines in one go. Of course, you can also configure individual timelines to have their own settings too. More on that later. This concept of being able to configure settings at the project level is probably new for editors coming from other NLEs. It's such a helpful feature, I'll show you an example in a moment. The second place settings are configured are in Preferences. These settings affect all the projects you work on. I want to show you one of my favorite features. It's called Live Save. Here it is. Fortunately, it's always turned on by default. Have you ever lost an entire morning's worth of work because you forgot to save and then your computer crashed? That's usually when you go and configure autosave. But Live Save is even better because unlike autosave in programs like Premiere, it doesn't interrupt you while you're working with that save dialog. And then on top of that, it's not just saving every 5 minutes, it's saving anytime you make a change. It saves instantly. You never need to lose your work again. You'll want to make sure that these features are on as well. Project and timeline backups. They save your timelines and projects at regular intervals as you're working, meaning you can revert to an older version or to a timeline you accidentally deleted. There's actually one more menu where settings are kept. These are your keyboard shortcuts. They're so important that they have their own menu. There's even presets here for editors transitioning from other NLEs, but I'm going to work with the default Resolve settings for now. Now, this is some pretty chunky media we're working with today. These clips are red code raw. Resolve has pretty amazing codec support. In Resolve, it's all built in. And this Mac I'm working with is pretty old. It's from 2019, but it plays the footage back just fine. Now, what if your computer can't? Not a problem. You can create proxies. And there's a dedicated app for that, the Proxy Generator app. I'll point at the folder where my footage is located and then hit start. This would be a good opportunity to go get a drink while proxies are generating. But if you don't have time for that, you can return to Resolve and the proxy generator will continue to work in the background without interrupting your work. If Resolve needs to use your processor, the proxy generator will automatically pause. As the proxies generate, you'll see these little pink proxy icons start appearing on each clip. And then this control up here, this allows you to choose whether Resolve uses the proxies or original media for playback. Simple as that. Resolve has amazing media management. When working with lots of footage, organizing is critical. Instead of moving footage into different bins, it's best practice to add metadata to better organize it. There's lots of ways to do this. I'm going to show you one of my favorites. When you select a clip, its metadata appears in the tab over on the right-hand side. If yours isn't open, just click on this button. Let's change the view to show me the shot and scene metadata. These fields are all editable. As this clip is of dancing, I'll add dancing as a keyword. Perfect. It's quick to enter metadata for multiple clips simultaneously. So I'll select all the other dancing clips and enter the keyword. Hit save and done. There's also dancing shots on the B camera. Let's add the keywords for those clips all in one go. And I should enter keywords for some of the other clips as well, like these stretching shots on Cam A and Cam C. Here's the cool thing. Resolve automatically makes smart bins for each of the keywords I've used. So now I have options. I can find the clips by navigating to the bins that they're stored in, or better yet, I can navigate to the clips using the keywords that I've associated with each. And because the dancing clips and stretching clips are spread across several bins, keyword smart bins give me a very convenient way of finding them all in one single place. If you're coming from Final Cut Pro, this kind of organization will probably feel pretty familiar, as Final Cut has excellent keyword features. If you're coming from Premiere though, I think you're going to love how Resolve works because the metadata system in Premiere can be quite clunky to use. Okay, we've ingested our media, we've done some preliminary organization. Let's start editing. It's time to move to the edit page. First, let's create a new timeline. This little checkbox tells me it's going to use the settings we configured in our project settings dialog. This is when I can override my project settings if I want this timeline to have unique settings. For now, I'm happy to use the project settings though. This should look really familiar if you're coming from Premiere. Look, it's a track-based editor. If you're coming from Final Cut, it will look a little less familiar, but that's because nothing quite works like Final Cut. But honestly, you won't have a problem. Different edits have different drivers. This video is going to be based around the interview, so we'll start by editing the interview. First things first, there's two angles of the interview, so we should make a multicam. The A and B angles of the interview are stored in different bins. To create multicams, you need to see both angles in the same bin simultaneously. You're going to love this. Hold down on Command or Control if you're on Windows, and then click on the A bin and the B bin. Now both bins are selected and you can see their contents simultaneously. It's small features like this that really make me love working in Resolve. I'll select both clips, right-click, and go to Create New Multicam Clip. There's different ways that you can sync your angles. If you have good audio, you can sync based on their waveforms. As these clips have been recorded with timecode, let's choose that option. And as easy as that, we have a multicam clip. If I double click on it, it will load in the source viewer and you can see that both angles play in synchronization.
Your mind into something that's like almost supernatural.
Without a doubt, one of my favorite features in Resolve is text-based editing. You can select any clip in your media pool with dialog. I'm going to select the multicam that we just made. Yes, it even works with multicams. Now hit the transcription button. It works really quickly. Look at the speed it's running at. I can use this transcript to navigate the clip. Just click and the source playhead will move.
You become obsessed with the idea of, I don't want to say the idea of being perfect, but you become obsessed with this idea of...
It's even detected the different speakers, the interviewer, and the interviewee. I can name them to make the transcript easier to navigate. Transcription makes editing so quick. If there's a comment I like, I can highlight it and click Insert. Now that comment is in my timeline. Here's an even quicker way of working. Instead of finding the comments I like, I can delete the comments that I don't by highlighting them and pressing delete. Now, if I select this entire passage of the transcript and hit Insert, Resolve will automatically edit this section into the interview timeline, removing the comments I deleted and just inserting the bits I left behind. Now, can you see why this is one of my favorite features? You'll want to finesse these edit points as sometimes words can get cut off. A human touch is still needed. Now, let's go over the main editing tools in Resolve. You're going to love how simple they are. Premiere has 7 different editing tools. Select, cut, roll, flip, slide, ripple, rate stretch. It's a lot. Final Cut has 5. Resolve simplifies all these tools into just 3. Selection mode, trim edit mode, and blade edit mode. Blade edit mode is for chopping clips up. Selection mode is for selecting and moving clips, like this. You can also use it to trim clips to length. The problem is that selection mode tool leaves gaps in your timeline wherever you go. See, look at that. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. I'll undo that and show you how you can avoid making these gaps. This brings us to the trim edit mode. If you're coming from Final Cut, you're going to love this tool because it will remind you of the magnetic timeline. If you're coming from Premiere, you're going to love this tool too because it combines 4 Premiere's tools into just one. If you click on the top of a clip, it performs a slip operation. If you click on the bottom of a clip, it performs a slide operation. If you click and drag on an edit point at the end of a clip, it performs a ripple edit. And if you click and drag the edit between 2 clips, it performs a rolling edit. And on top of that, you get these super cool visualizations with this traffic light system that shows you the clip's handles. This is the great thing about transitioning to Resolve. In some cases, it's a lateral transition. In a lot of instances, it's a vertical upgrade. You're learning tools that aren't just different, but in many cases, they're actually simpler to use. In the instance of the editing tools, there's less clicking between different hotkeys. It just makes sense. Do you like to use several timelines when you're building out your edits? It can help keep things tidier sometimes. So let's do that. Let's make a timeline to build out our B-roll. Can you do things like 3-point editing in Resolve? Of course you can. Your tried and tested workflows from Premiere and Final Cut will work in Resolve. I'll use one of those keyword smart bins I created in the media page to find my stretching shots. Don't forget, if your smart bins aren't visible, turn them on up here. I can double click on a clip, it loads it into the source viewer, and then make in and out points. I love using the I and O hotkeys for that, and then I can insert it into the timeline. There's also this really cool feature in Resolve called Live Preview. You saw this when we were ingesting media. I can hover over the clips, and while I'm scrubbing through, I can hit I and O to make my in and out points, and then drag that clip directly into the timeline, or even better, use my hotkey to insert it into the timeline. This is awesome because it allows us to work with less clicks. If you're coming from Final Cut Pro, that's going to feel so familiar. Let's move to the dancing smart bin. You can also throw multiple clips into the timeline simultaneously, like this. You can also edit those clips simultaneously. Check this out. I'll select them all and hit Command D or Control D to bring up the clip duration dialog and hit the 5-second button. It's adjusted them all simultaneously, but whoa, that's left all of these gaps. That's because I was in selection edit mode. Let's undo that and try it again in trim edit mode. That's better. As you can see, tools in Resolve will respond differently depending on what edit mode you're in. Right, I have a problem I want to fix. A lot of my footage is in different aspect ratios, so it's displaying with black bars. Remember I said I was going to give you an example of how cool it is to be able to configure settings that affect the entire project? Well, here's an example. In Project Settings, in the Image Scaling tab, I can change the way Resolve processes clips that have mismatched resolutions. I'll select Scale Full Frame with Crop and hit Save. Now, all those clips are automatically scaled to fill the screen. No more black bars. That would take more time to do in Premiere because it doesn't have options for that. Now, here's something you can do in Premiere. You can load multiple timelines simultaneously. We like to call that pancake editing. And yep, you can do that in Resolve as well. The timeline view options are in this menu right here. Turn on stacked timelines. Now you can add a second timeline to your interface with this plus button and choose which timelines are visible from the drop-downs. I can copy or drag clips between timelines. I'll drag some of my B-roll clips into track 2 on my main timeline, and then I can continue to use the trim, selection, and blade edit modes to refine the edit. If you're working on a complex edit, this kind of compartmentalization is super helpful. This edit is so simple though, it's not needed, but I wanted to show you how easy it is to transition your workflows. Instead of making you watch me build out this edit, I'm going to jump ahead to a more complete timeline. But with the twist, it's actually an edit I made in Premiere Pro. Did you know that Resolve can import your Premiere Pro edits and it can read Final Cut edits too? This is really significant to note. You can move edits from Avid, Premiere, Final Cut, all into Resolve. In fact, it has the best inter-NLE compatibility of any NLE, period. It's super easy. Here we go. File, import, and here's the XML I exported from Premiere. We'll say OK to this dialog, and boom, here it is. This is a nice, short 30-second edit. It even has some music along with it. Let's talk about effects, graphics, and audio. Final Cut Pro has motion, Premiere Pro has After Effects and Audition. They're all separate programs. Resolve has Fusion and Fairlight. Best thing yet is that it's all built into a single program. Let's deal with audio first. There's two big problems. The interview has background noise, and the music has vocals, and I want it just to be instrumental. So let's start with problem one. If I solo the dialogue so we can hear it in isolation.
I started off like dance classes. It was like jazz and tap and all of that. But there was also kind of like lyrical dance. And I think...
Yeah, you can really tell. Listen to all that background noise. Not nice. I don't think you're ready for how simple the fix is going to be to this. Select the track. Turn on voice isolation.
I started off like dance classes. It was like jazz and tap and all of that. But there was also kind of like lyrical dance. And I think...
Sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? This is a studio feature, by the way. Now let's also turn the dialogue leveler on to even out the volume of the interview. It's going to even out all the quiet and loud parts. This is another studio feature. So problem one, sorted. Problem two, let's fix the music. We'll solo the music track instead of the interview. Riding on the same page, walking at the same it's a great song, but the vocals compete too much with the interview. Again, let's select the track and go to its settings. This time we'll turn on the music remixer and mute the vocals. Now listen to it. Incredible! I can refine it further by getting rid of other instruments too, like this. Now there are other tools out there that can do this, but they usually require you to export your audio, use the tool, and then re-import it. This is all built into DaVinci Resolve Studio, and there's no additional cost. Yes, these are studio features that we've been demoing, but remember, a dedicated audio plugin, just one of the tools I've just demoed, might cost $100 a year. You're getting all of these tools, plus the audio transcription tools I just showed you, plus all the crazy clever tools on all the other pages, for a one-off cost of just under $300. Putting the incredible price aside, by removing those friction points, it means you have more time and energy to be creative. I'm not going to go into detail, but if you need even more sophisticated audio tools, just switch over to the Fairlight page. Any changes you make here are automatically reflected back in the edit page. Let's add some effects. There's a ton of things you can do in the edit page. For example, I want this clip to be blurred so the title on top stands out better. So let's use the Gaussian blur effect. Find it in the Effects tab. I like searching for it. Now simply drag it onto the clip. Easy peasy. Because the title comes on halfway through the clip, let's animate the blur so it begins turned off. We'll add a keyframe with the blur turned off, and then add a keyframe a little later where the blur is turned up. Just like Premiere and Final Cut, wherever you see this diamond icon, that means this property can be animated. Let's see what it looks like. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next clip. There's a bunch of other pre-built effects. I want to use this repeat effect to stylize this shot. The default settings, though, are all wrong, so let's do some tweaks. If your system's not powerful enough to handle these effects, not a problem. Go to Playback and set your render cache to Smart. Effects like these will be rendered in the background so you can get smooth playback. Once it's done, this line will turn from red to blue.
I guess it's
and now,
kind of the refinement of...
Again, this should feel super familiar if you're coming from Premiere or Final Cut. Both systems have built-in effects, animation, and render caching. Where is it different? In Premiere or Final Cut, when you reach the limit of a tool, when you hit that ceiling, there's nothing you can do. You either have to buy plugins or move to another program like After Effects or Motion. That's not the case with Resolve. In Resolve, when the going gets tough, just click onto the Fusion page. Check this out. I'm going to do some graphics on this clip. I have a poster I want to superimpose on the building. My playhead is over the clip. I'm going to click on the Fusion button and, well, voila! That clip is automatically turned into a Fusion clip. Welcome to the Fusion page. This part of Resolve is incredibly powerful. As a result, there's lots of buttons and settings. And this whole thing down here, the node tree, it can be confusing when you don't understand what's happening. Here's a quick 30-second introduction. There's two viewers, just the same as you have on the edit page. On the right, your inspector allows you to configure all the tools you add to your Fusion composition. At the bottom, your node viewer is where you add your tools and effects and configure in what order they get applied to the image. We have a media in node because we're starting with the footage from our media pool, and we have a media out node at the end because, well, we want to send the image back to the screen when we're done. All of the cool tools we add will go in between. Simpler than you thought, right? I hope so. It will make even more sense as we continue. As the camera is moving, I can't just use a static poster of this image. It needs to be tracked in. Let's add something called a Planar Tracker to the composition. Can you see how it's connected to the node tree? I'll draw lines around the part of the image that I want to track. That's going to be the building, as that's where I'm going to put the poster, and then hit the Track Forward button. Now that the track is complete, we can switch the Planar Tracker to Corner Pin mode. At this point, I'm going to want to add the poster to the composition. It's in my media pool, and I can add it by simply dragging it to the node tree. I can equip the poster in the left-hand viewer by dragging it into the viewer. This is a great place to point out how these viewers work. There's two dots under the poster's media in node. On this node, the left one is marked, showing that this node is being viewed in the left-hand viewer. The final media out node in the composition, the one that is finalizing my image, it's showing that it's visible in the right-hand viewer. The Planar Tracker has inputs for the image we're tracking. That one's already connected. It also has an input for the image we want to track onto the clip. That one's not connected yet. Let's connect the poster. I'll feed it into the Planar Tracker. Hey, now you can see it on the building. All that's left is to tweak its corners to line up with the building. And now that's done, let's hit play.
Eventually, I just started taking ballet lessons. On a good day, it does actually feel like...
That looks awesome. You know what's even more awesome? When I go back to the edit page now, my Fusion composition is visible immediately. No rendering, no exporting, no importing, no conforming. It just works. Can you imagine how much time that will save on complex projects? The color page works much the same way. When I head to the color page, look, my Fusion composition is even visible here, and I can start grading right away. This is perhaps what Resolve is best known for, its amazing color grading tools. How does this toolset compare to Premiere or Final Cut? Premiere and Final Cut's approach to color grading is to use plugins in the editing timeline. Resolve has an entire page dedicated to color grading. It's no exaggeration to say this interface is used on Hollywood movies that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. You can use the same tools on your next video, but that doesn't mean it has to be complex. Let me show you how simple it can be by grading this interview shot. Firstly, it's too dark. It's easy to adjust exposure using the primary wheels. There's 4 of them, but we're going to focus on these 3 on the left. Each wheel affects a different part of the image. The lift wheel has the biggest effect on the dark parts of the image. Gain targets the brighter portions of the image. The gamma wheel affects the image overall. It's probably most similar to the exposure tool in Premiere's Lumetri if you're used to using that. If you're coming from Final Cut, then this will feel nice and familiar, as Final Cut gives you different color wheels for different tonal ranges in the image. To keep it simple, if you're not sure where to start, I'd suggest the gamma control. Let's give the image a little boost. Awesome. I'd like to do something a little creative now. I want to desaturate the background to make the interviewee pop. I'll make a new node for this. I'm going to use the keyboard hotkey. That's Alt-S. Now I need some way of masking her out. That would be super tedious to do by hand, not to mention she moves. So that's no good. Let's use Magic Mask. This is a studio feature. Select it from the toolset. I'm going to pop it into the person mode. Draw a stroke on the subject you want it to track, which is our interviewee. And I'll turn on the mask overlay so I can see what it's doing. There you go. That's amazing. The rest of the image needs to be tracked, so I'll click the Track Forward button. We can turn the overlay off. The primary saturation controls are over here, so let's turn down saturation, say to 10. But do you see how it's affecting her, not the background? That's easy to fix. Just need to hit the button here in the Magic Mask controls to invert the mask. That's better. Want to see one more cool trick in the color page? I'll show it to you on the next clip. Here's another studio feature. It's found in the Effects tab called Film Look Creator. It allows you to build your own film emulation look. The presets are pretty good though. I'll use the cinematic preset. When I'm done grading and I head back to the edit page, look. All my color grades are visible, but what if I want to change my edit? Not a problem, as I can extend the clips and I don't have to go back and color grade it again. This has to be one of the biggest benefits of working in Resolve. Think about the amount of time you spend moving files between different programs when editing in Premiere or Final Cut Pro. In Resolve, your entire post-production workflow is integrated into one program. So switching might involve some temporary inconvenience, but you'll make back that lost time so quickly because of how much more streamlined your workflow will be. I've got one more thing to show you. Clicking Home will take us back to where we started, our project manager. The way that Resolve manages project files is different. When you work in Premiere, your work gets saved to a Premiere project file. You get to choose where that's stored. Final Cut is similar. Your work gets stored in files that live on your drive. In Resolve, you don't store your projects in files. Instead, Resolve manages them for you in a library. That's what this is. The project manager allows you to browse your different libraries. That library can be stored locally on your computer, on a network server, or in the cloud. I'm working in a cloud library, which costs me $5 per month. Library-based project management has a couple of big advantages. First, I like to think it allows you to focus on creativity because you don't have to spend as much time managing your project files. Secondly, it's what allows awesome features like Live Save and automatic project backups to work. And thirdly, here's the biggest plus, it makes sharing and collaborating on projects easier. Let me show you. I'm gonna need Leon's help for this. Come on, Leon.
Hey everybody, I'm connected to the same cloud library as Natalie. This is the project that Natalie is working in. I can load the project at the same time. Once inside, I can even see what part of the project she's working in. She's got the main timeline loaded. Now I can load that timeline. I can even play it.
It was like jazz and tap and all of that. But there was also...
But I can't make changes. As hard as I try, these clips won't budge. Obviously, I can't edit at the same time. That would cause too many conflicts. That's why Resolve locks the timeline to Natalie for editing. I only get read-only access. But while the timeline is locked for editing, it's not locked for color grading. I can actually start to grade the clips in this timeline while Natalie is still working. This is so cool. Let me show you. I'll head to the color page and I'm going to add a quick grade to this first clip. I'll fix the contrast in the image with the lift and gain master wheels. I'm going to correct the color cast, add some contrast, and boost the saturation. Now that I've finished my color correction, I can save it back to the project just by simply moving on to another clip. And now Natalie should be able to see that color correction on her computer.
It looks like Leon has changed the color grade on this clip. If I hit the refresh button, it will update. Look, there you go. Obviously, there's lots of other ways we can collaborate in this cloud project. But again, if you've ever collaborated with someone remotely or even in the same office, how much time do you spend syncing files, relinking media, or just waiting for someone else to finish so you can start your work? Resolve's library-based project management and cloud services fix those issues. How was that for you? In summary, there's a lot of similarities between Premiere, Final Cut, and Resolve. I think you'll find it more intuitive and familiar than you originally thought. But if it was exactly the same, there wouldn't be a point to switching. It's got awesome features like voice isolation, magic mask, and color management. A forever license to Resolve is half the cost of your annual Adobe subscription. And the entire post-production workflow is integrated into a single program, so no more wasting time switching programs or relinking media. There are so many reasons to switch. If you've decided to make the change, how can you make that journey as smoothly as possible? Let us be your guide. We've put together a comprehensive course that covers all the fundamental skills that you need to work in DaVinci Resolve. There's a staggering 9 hours of high-quality training, there's 52 awesome lessons, and if you get stuck, we're here to help. Did you like the media that we've been demonstrating with today? Well, that's all included in the course. Some courses only have a handful of clips for you to play with. The problem is that when the clips are so heavily curated, you don't get to problem solve, and you don't get to practice real-world workflows. There's an incredible 2 hours of footage for you to use in this course. If you're a working professional, it's important that you learn as quickly as possible so you can get back to paid jobs. If you're a hobbyist, you'll love this course just as much. If you'd like to learn more, there's a link in the description. And even if the course isn't for you right now, please sign up to our mailing list so you can be the first to hear when new videos like this one come out. Thanks for watching, and whatever program you use, keep on making awesome content.